Hello, hello. It is so wonderful to really see you, but hopefully here with all of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Yorona Bosker, certified speaker and communications coach, life coach, speaker, author, podcaster, all of the above. And I help people communicate with purpose and integrity with themselves and all of those around them. So, before my wonderful guest, Prosper, introduces himself, I have a request for anyone listening or watching. As this series continues, I'd like your input for communication topics that interest you. We know that communication runs really deep. In fact, it runs a lot deeper than we think sometimes. So, don't be afraid to stretch the limits of where and how communication shapes our lives. I'm going to ask that you please feel free to DM your ideas to me, drop them in the comments, or even email them to me at yorona@yoronabuster.com. All right, Prosper, would you please introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a bit about yourself?
Fantastic. Now, Your Honor, when you said, for those that don't know me, you didn't quite say what your name means. And I love that a lot because it means she shall sing. And I remember when we had that chat, I kept that, meaning because not a lot of people live up to their actual name. And you and I have. See, you're singing and you're helping people communicate and, move their message. And as you said, my name is Prosper. All right. I'm also working and helping people to be, do, and have a happier existence. So, like you said, that alone really should be the basis of how people should communicate based on basically who they are and having that self-awareness of where they're coming from. So
That's a
I'm based in Melbourne and I lead a team of digital marketers that help people tell their story on the internet. And the reason we do this is we are doing that so that people can communicate their message, communicate their value to those that actually need it the most. So thank you so much for having me on your program.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And it's so you make a really good point there. We take our name a lot of times, and some people hate their name. Some people love their name. Some people do so much with their name. Some people kind of begrudgingly introduce themselves and then go like, okay, enough about that, right? But a name is your identifier, yet it's not always the totality of who you are. And we can make that. We can make something much bigger than that. And I think in this conversation, the reason why I wanted to have this with you is because you understand about leadership. You understand a lot about what it takes to inspire, to influence, to really gain trust with other people. And so that was the question that kept coming to my mind because when I say the words conversations that matter, I really want to talk about why. Why does communication matter? And how does it matter in the world that we work in? So, how is it, in your mind, in your opinion, how do successful leaders really use communication to do all of those things, to inspire, to influence, to build trust with the people that they work with and for and that are under their umbrella? How do they do that? How do successful leaders use the most important tool of communication to do all of those things?
Absolutely. See, and that's a very good place to start off with. First of all, we need to understand what communication is and what communication is not. All
Mm.
right. So maybe let's start off with what it's not. What it's not is obviously the arrogance, the top down, the do as I say, not as I do, the I'm going out, don't ask me where, and then we later on discover you at a jumbotron somewhere where you're not supposed to be. You know what I mean? Things like that. And that's pretty much where everything is. And if we use that particular example, had that guy been a really good communicator, had that guy been a really honest, down to earth person, or that lady as well as leaders within their organization, a lot of people would have defended them.
Mhm.
Whereas when they were put out in the open, because they had not created those relationships, they had not created a reason for people to want to protect them. That's why that whole thing went wild. And the people that actually know them were adding fire to the flame. Now, what communication really is have people understand, first of all, why they
Mhm.
need to be trusting you. When you send me a message and you say, hey, let's have a chat about this and stuff like that, the first thing that I did was, she's done a TEDx talk. She helps people communicate their messages. And she is also, embodying all of this. That alone made this made this easy for me to say, you know what? Yes, let me come around.
Yeah.
But if you were in a whole different world and you present a
Mhm.
topic like this, I would be questioning, why you, why now, and why should anybody care? So when you approach and you're in front of an audience, everybody is coming from where they're coming from.
Mm.
What was the first thing that we did when we met? We exchanged pleasantries, we joked around about our lives and things of that nature, and we, just because of the banter that we already have. That was communicating at a human level. Nobody asked credentials. Nobody asked what's going on. How are you as a person that's showing up in front of me? And
Mm.
that alone starts the basis of communication. Because if I can trust myself in front of you, let alone the audience, let alone anybody else,
Mm.
we can have this conversation. But if people cannot trust you and cannot
Mhm.
understand why, or the reason why they should be doing anything,
Yeah.
it makes it a whole lot different for people to actually engage. So
I
that's the
agree.
reason. That's the reason why communication is important. You just need to show people where they're headed to, and that they can trust that you too are going to be going with them along the way.
I love that, and I agree entirely. And you know what you just said actually makes me think about the reason why I don't like to stand on my accolades and accomplishments, because those are things I've done, but they aren't who I am. And I think that healthy leadership means figuring out who you are and the values you hold true. Because if you can be the example of the values that you wish to see first in yourself, then you can exemplify that for the people around you. But it doesn't come from all the things I've done, it comes from the core of me, which has nothing to do with what I've done. It has everything to do with who I am and how I show up in the world.
Mm. You
Right?
see, I come from a culture where we celebrate every individual because they bring something different to the table. Okay. So if you look at my hands, for those that are watching, no two fingers on the same hand are of the same height.
Mm.
That means we are all coming in to bring about a whole unique experience for the next person. And I'm just going to talk about what we have right now, right this particular moment. Now, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a teacher, you're a coach, you're a speaker to the people that you are. But right now, in this frame,
Mhm.
you're leading this conversation. You're a podcast host.
Right.
You're not a mom to me, and I'm not a dad to you. So
Right.
I'll give you an example. In the world that we live in, who are you in the context of what is actually happening? So if we're on a plane, we're flying maybe to we're coming from New Jersey and you're coming to Melbourne, okay? And on that plane, all right, the pilot starts, God forbid that happens, but the pilot starts choking and they need help. So we are faced with a situation where we need somebody to fly that plane, but we also need a doctor
Mhm.
to help that pilot in that particular scenario.
Yep.
But it but on seat 74B is a lawyer, okay, who just won the biggest case of his life.
Mhm.
All right. In this particular situation, do we care about the lawyer? Do we even need to know he is a lawyer? What we need right now is somebody who can fly the plane and maybe help the pilot to fly
Right.
the plane. So whoever you are or whatever you are from wherever you came from, if it is not relevant in the context and the frame of where it's needed, it's not. So giving what people need to understand is in this particular instance, who are you and why should
Mhm.
anybody care? And that's the communication that needs to happen. What you bring and what comes along
Right.
basically only matters if it is relevant to that particular context. Because you could be somebody's leader, and
Right.
if you are no longer helping them feel safe or needed in that particular situation, they can no longer want to work with you in that particular sense, and they can walk away. So I feel like people need to understand that a lot.
I hear where you're going with this, because to me, if I can reframe this, to me,
Yes.
what that says is we all have many roles.
Right.
Many roles we take on in our lives, many hats we wear. In one context, I'm mom. In
Yeah.
another context, I'm a speaker and I'm speaking in front of hundreds of thousands of people. In one
Yeah.
context, I'm a wife, and in another context, I'm a sister. In another context, I'm a mentor or a mentee. In another context, I am a passenger on a flight. And if I am the passenger on the flight and the context of the situation doesn't call for me to get involved, my involvement would only complicate things, right?
They,
So if we can take this to leadership, when we're saying somebody who is a successful leader, we're talking about that they're in that role of leadership. And in the
yeah.
role of leadership, in that moment, they need to be able to be a shining example, influence, not force, right? And to build trust also means that it needs to be not a dictatorship, but rather a learning of one another, because I think really healthy leaders know that they have a lot to learn from the people that they lead, just as
Exactly.
much as they have to teach. And I think that's really important because it also requires you to remember, what role am I in this moment?
They,
And sometimes you have to then microcosm that. Am I in a role right now where I am leading or I am learning? Am I in a role where I am sitting back so that the people I'm leading can join in the conversation, can add value to the conversation? That means I need to sit back and learn from them and offer them that space and place to actually build their voice in there. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
that's and it's a moment by moment scenario, which requires for us to be present, which requires for us to be active and actively listening, not listening to want to respond. Because if you're listening to want to respond, you're responding to a frame that happened a minute ago, and you're no longer in that context.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Presence is so important in good leadership. I was working with somebody
Yeah.
who is in a high up role, and one of the things we would talk about is how he would function in meetings. And he would explain that sometimes while he's in a meeting with others, if especially if it was a virtual meeting, sometimes yes, he would be checking his chats from his teams. He would be doing this, he would be doing that. And I said, "So are you checking your chats? Are you answering messages? Are you figuring out what you need to do next? Or are you listening to what everybody else is saying around you?" And he said, "Well,
Mm,
I need to multitask." And I said, "Do you really need to multitask in that moment? what would be most beneficial to you in that moment? And he came to understand that what he really needed to do was be paying attention, because the best leaders understand that they have to set everything else aside to be fully engaged in what is happening here and now, so that they can actually have the most authentic, the most genuine, and the most integral response.
Mm. You see the thing, and you're absolutely right. We have so many of these distractions, and each distraction opens a loop in your head. Now,
Mhm.
our brains are goal-seeking mechanisms. Right now, if we start really focusing on maybe what you're gonna have for lunch or for dinner. For me, this is early morning. I'm gonna start thinking, oh, what am I gonna do for breakfast and things like that. And I automatically start talking about eggs. Of course, it is part of a conversation, but is that the context that we want in this particular situation? Yet I've missed out on the vital things that need to be focused. So maybe you see, when people come to us and we have the privilege of leading them, they're coming from somewhere. They're coming from a home, they're coming from a life that we know nothing about. They,
That's
you know what I mean? So if we're not present
right.
with
Yeah.
them, they also might actually not be present because they might have left the kettle on at home and forgot to switch off the lights, and now they're thinking the bill is just going to be so high, and if this guy is not going to finish what he's saying, I need to go and call my husband to let the cat out.
Right.
Did you
Right.
know what I mean? Like, did you see
Yeah.
how many things?
And a great leader can tell when the people are distracted. They can tell when people aren't focused, when people aren't here, when people aren't haven't set those things aside. And it's not for, in my opinion, this is my opinion, it is
Yes,
not for a leader to call that out, but it is for a leader to try to figure out how to empathetically respond.
there you go.
How
All right.
how how do we help people be fully human, fully present with all the distractions that they have going on, and be capable of engaging right here and right now? That's
You
a
know.
really important question, because that requires you to recognize that how you show up is how they're going to show up, which is directly related to, right, how do we communicate inspiration and influence? How do we communicate our influence? If I'm sitting here distracted and somebody, in my old work, one of my staff might walk in the door and say, "Hey, do you have a minute?" If I didn't really have a minute, but I said, "Sure, sure, sure," and then I continued to proceed to do what I was doing and only listened to them halfway, what I would be communicating to them is that my time is more valuable than it's worth to listen to you. I would also be
Mm,
communicating to them that I told you I have time, but I don't actually have time. So I'm showing you that I'm doing something entire, then my words aren't matching with my deeds and actions, right? Now, if I
that's
if I didn't have the time in that moment, one of the things I would need to say, and this is really important for building trust when we're communicating with subordinates, when we're communicating with our staff, when we're communicating with anybody who we lead or manage. If I said, "You know what? I really want to hear what you have to say. Can I have 5 minutes to finish this thing up? And then you're going to have my full attention." What that says
mm,
is, you can trust me to give you my full attention. Now is not the right moment, but I'm going to, give me 5 minutes, give me 10 minutes, whatever it may be. And then you're going to have my full attention. And what that says is, I value you. I value you, and I value what you need to talk to me about.
mm. And I value that a great deal because so many of us think what we do takes much more precedence than what other people are bringing to the table. That could happen with kids, the spouse, or things of that nature. But as human beings, we are societal at the core. And by being societal means we heavily depend on others for our own survival. So you can imagine what you're talking about. Like if you give somebody your halfback and they're trying to communicate something to you, that is already signaling rejection. That is already putting a hierarchy in the relationship, which, like you said, what I do matters than what you're bringing to the table. If that team member or that person was coming up with an issue or something that could help the business move forward, or things that could actually save you being the leader to start off with, they might actually hold back, thinking, oh, wait a minute, maybe that email to corporate is much more important than me telling the boss that I think there's a fire in the mailroom, but I don't know how to get.
Yeah, that's not good if you can't speak up.
Yeah, but you were not listening. All right. So maybe I thought, oh, maybe corporate needs to know last month's numbers. Yeah, because that is what usually is happening. And I'm just trying to tell you that maybe somebody just is stuck in the bathroom and they can't get out.
You know, it's very interesting because I often think about it like a juggling act. You know, there's always going to be a ball of priority.
Yeah.
I find it really funny, you know, the word priority indicates one thing at a time,
Mhm.
one thing at a time, but yet we talk about priorities. What we don't understand is that yes, we have many priorities, but only one thing can stand at the top at one singular time. So what's
Mm,
really important is not to say, you know, if you're a distracted boss, if you're constantly distracted and every time somebody comes to you, you're distracted by all the other things, what you're saying is, you will never be a priority to me. But
mm,
if you are actually saying, "Okay, I need to finish this what I'm doing right now, and then I'm gonna come to you." What you're saying is, "You get my priority top slot right now. Here's the time I have to give you in my priority. Now you're my singular priority in this moment." It doesn't, because I see this happen so often with leaders. They're constantly pushing other things to prioritize, and then other things are constantly getting shifted to the bottom, shifted to the bottom. But as a
mm,
juggling act, at some point, those things have to come to the top. Otherwise, what you're saying is, those things I never value. And that can go
mm,
whether that's the people you manage or you oversee, whether that's you know, um, your colleagues, or even whether, even sometimes if that's somebody above you, what you're always communicating to them is, you're never going to be in my priority top slot. What we need to communicate is, everything gets a moment in my top slot at some point. How do I shift it? How do I bring it up? Now, one thing I have seen, and I don't know if you've seen this too, but I have seen leaders who always push down other things for their staff, for their subordinates, so it's like, okay, sure, I'll set this aside. Okay, sure, I'll set this aside. But what that also tells them is that none of the really, your position is not important, or really those other things don't matter. They matter
mm,
more. We have
mm,
to carry the balance there, because I've seen that. I've seen it where leaders will be like, I got to give my staff, my staff is always going to be top slot. But now what you're saying is that you guys can walk all over me. You guys can take all of my time, and I'll just have to figure out how to manage those other things when you guys don't
mm.
need me, which is going to be very rarely. So,
You see, there's a lot of things that come out from that. Maybe people haven't been given much ownership if they're always taking your time. Because if you allow people to be, if you allow people to actually contribute, because in life we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. Do you know what I mean? And if we want to live the best lives, we need to be at least contributing something to the greater good. All right. And if people keep nagging you as a leader, then that means you haven't communicated the vision enough. All right. So I'll give you an example of, you've seen maybe in car racing. There's always that guy who sits on the side and he's telling the driver where to go and stuff like that. Can you imagine if that guy is just somebody like me who's just was available on the day and the driver didn't get a guy, and I'll be asking the guy, so what does this button do? Can I open the window? It's a bit warm in here because I don't understand where I'm supposed to be going and what's supposed to be happening. And if we maybe by chance drive past a drive through, I'll be like, hey, what you're going too fast. What do you know what I mean? Because I haven't been given the vision of where we're supposed to be going. And that's exactly because the driver is you, the leader. All right. You've got all your cockpit and everything else is all set. You're ready. You want to win the race. You understand where you need to go. But if the next guy doesn't understand what needs to be happening, he's nothing but a distraction.
Mm, I love that. I love that. That's a really great analogy when it comes especially to inspiration as a leadership. In leadership, we can't just tell people what to do. We have to inspire them to want to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And if we're not, if they're constantly coming to us and asking us 10,000 questions, it means we haven't given them enough leeway, inspiration, and motivation to do it for themselves, to build the competency of what they don't yet know. I've seen this happen for a lot of people who micromanage in leadership. They always want to come to me for everything, come to me for everything, right? And they're always like, no, 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 don't make any decisions without me. But that's impossible. You have to teach people how to make those decisions so that you don't have to be the sole person reliant upon, because you're not inspiring them. You're just dragging them around behind you, right? And you're like, okay, are you guys there? You guys there? Okay, you need to do this. Oh, wait, but don't do that without telling me what you're doing. That's terrible. You're just dragging them with you. You're not inspiring them to move on to themselves, to be competent enough and comfortable enough to say, I think I got this. Let me try this on my own. And that's
Ooh,
inspiration. What you're communicating to them is, you'll never be able to do it without me.
absolutely. Absolutely. See, it's 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 so inspiring when people come to work knowing what they're supposed to be doing and where it leads to.
Yeah.
I'm going to give another example of, I'm not that much of a Formula One racing person, but the way they do their whole thing. Have you ever noticed when the race is going, the guy's in there, he doesn't go, he goes in, he docks. In 5 seconds, the whole car is changed. Everyone knows their part in
Yeah.
order for, do you know what I mean? Everyone knows what their job is supposed to be. Can you imagine if it's your first day on the job and you're the one who's supposed to take off the right wheel and you ask it, so what we do we, is it righty tighty lefty? Do you know what I mean?
Lefty loosey. No, I don't know. Oh,
Yeah, is that, did I do it right? Do you know what I mean? And everyone takes ownership of their 2 seconds of what's happening in that particular whole thing. Like if you really look at it, there's a video that goes on top. I watch that all the time. So I'm looking at where, because the driver doesn't go out of the car and tells them, yeah, can you check? Because it was a little bit bumpy on that other side. No, no, no. The whole team already knows what needs to be fixed. So this is what I do when I go into my meetings every Monday. I literally go in to be told what needs to happen. The reason why that is because I'm out here. I don't know about you, but I'm working right now. This is me working, all right? But my whole enterprise is functioning. We probably have 6 or 7, 8 videos that are being produced that are ready to go out, and we've got a whole engine that's working. And I just come into the meeting on Monday, and then I'm just like, good morning, people. Now let me know what I need to know.
right, right, right. You can't do
Because
it any other way.
you get it, because everyone has their role and they've taken ownership. They
Yeah.
have visceral. I'm not even allowed to maybe sometimes look at some of the emails because that's not for me. Do you get what I mean? Like
Yep.
it's set up like that in my, because then I'm messing up with somebody else's job. Because if I was the one who knew how to do that, then I would have been doing that. But then I'm being the bottleneck within the whole organization.
I love this, and here's what it makes me think about. A great leader isn't just inspiring, isn't just influencing. A great leader knows how to help others take ownership, but also come to them when there's questions. Both things should be true, right? We can't be in a situation where everybody's constantly coming and dragging questions at us, because then they're clearly then something's wrong. You haven't given them enough ownership. But we also can't be in a situation where everybody's taking so much ownership that they're disregarding your influence, right? They're like, no, 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 like no, because you have to be the head of the spear. But the head of
Absolutely.
the spear doesn't function if the rest of the body is falling apart,
Mm.
right?
Oh, that I like that. I like that. But the thing about it is, are you being clear and are you showing people the direction? All right, because um, if people know exactly where to go, they will take lead. They will take ownership of that particular thing. Are you being passionate? Are you encouraging enough, or are you letting people have an understanding what they do matters? All right, I'm gonna say this with the utmost love and respect.
Mhm.
So in Melbourne, during the pandemic, people were told something that I think people can't get past, that their work is non-essential. And if you really look at those words, and then you look at the timeline of when they were being told, "Oh, other people can go to work, but what you do doesn't matter." And it took about 2 years for that to start mattering. Now, you, as leaders, we are expecting people to come back to those jobs that nobody needed. That's why I
Yeah,
said I'm saying this with utmost love and respect.
yeah,
Because if the world functioned without me being needed for that to happen, then what am I contributing? And
right.
that alone really needs to be addressed, because now people are facing a lot of existential crisis with the advent of AI, because half of the jobs that were deemed non-essential
Right.
are the ones that are also being skirted around by this artificial intelligence. If you really, really focus on that particular context in this frame that I'm speaking this on, not in the emotion that this brings.
Right. Right.
So many people need reassurance,
Yeah.
especially as leaders. We need to get back and really focus on getting our teams to understand that they're needed. What they do has some sort of real world impact, which at a core, yes,
Yeah.
we need to pay our mortgages and just maybe have money to buy stuff. But at a core, we would rather be doing things that we deem meaningful, even if we're not getting paid for it.
Right. You know, it's interesting because I know you know me and all in the world of parenting. One of the things, and in psychology, we have a theory. It's called the self-determination theory. And the self-determination theory, I know I explained this to you, but the self-determination theory, there's three things all humans need to feel like a functional, healthy, complete human: connection, control, and competency. And control is really about autonomy, the ability to choose for oneself. But that competency is the ability to do for oneself. And
Yeah.
when we feel like we aren't doing, we feel less than, we feel worthless, we feel like why do we even matter? What's the point? And it brings up, you're right, these existential crises and these moments of feeling severe depression and anxiety. And, you know, every single human needs to feel needed on some level. And here's the thing that I always go back to, and I think every leader should make sure that the people they're leading know this. First off, they need to feel seen and heard. They need to see that they are valuable. But more than anything else, we have to be able to honor the value of simply being, of simply existing. And I think we don't value other people's existence nearly as much as we should. But here's the thing: if a person exists, that means they matter. They just have to help. We, as leaders, we have to figure out how to help them figure out how they can matter in their own eyes.
You see, where we are in life right now, what you just said there, if somebody could bottle that up and share it with the world, because how somebody matters is not just in your eyes, they also matter to their family, they matter to their existence, they matter to their banker, they matter to their neighbor, they matter to just about everybody else. Now, we're speaking on an online platform right now, and I chose this frame. What you don't see is what's right across from me. What you don't see is who is sitting across from me. What you don't see is who is in that next room. Where I am, this is my kingdom. Let's say you're my boss and you start maybe berating or saying things that might be belittling me when I'm in my kingdom. I automatically start thinking, maybe my wife can hear that. Maybe my kids can hear that. And that automatically makes me not only little in your world, but little in my own world. So this is where
Yeah.
so this is where it's, as leaders, we really need to have a 360 context of what is happening at that particular moment. Like if we can go back to the COVID days, my kitchen table became a restaurant, became a boardroom, became a laundromat, and it became a classroom. So if I'm just sitting here, you don't know how long this table is, you don't know where I'm positioned. There could be my 10-year-old, my 6-year-old kid sitting across, listening to this conversation and hearing people talk to their parent or their loved one like that. And now I'm trying to protect my ego from a standpoint of your and my kid. So there's so much that is going on that we need to be very cognizant of. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a guy sitting in my office. And
But and I want to sum it up with this because that's really important. One of the things leaders need to know is that they don't know everything.
oh,
I think that really is what we need to sum it up with, which means that when we're communicating with someone, we're only communicating with them from the thing that we do know, from the things that we are aware of, from the place that we are understanding. That lens, that small, really very direct lens, very focused lens, requires nuance, it requires context, and it requires an understanding that at the end of the day, you are leading other humans, and humans are complex. And everybody's got their feelings, and everybody's got their stories, and everybody needs to feel seen and heard, and everybody needs to have moments to absorb what we're saying, what we're doing, how we're being. And it's necessary to have those, I like, we can call them pulse checks. A lot of people call them many different things, but we need to get a check on the pulse of the people that we are leading. Because if we aren't pulsing that, if we aren't checking in on that, then what we're really doing is just seeing a cog in the wheel and not another human being whose existence matters. Yeah. Any final thought?
I just feel like whatever situation you're in, your parent, your leader, at any given moment, if someone communicated to you the same way you're maybe communicating to them, what impact would that have on you, on them, on everything else that you're hoping to achieve? And once we have that understanding, I visually believe the world will be a fantastic place, because so many people say a lot of things. Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to say that to their grandmother. They wouldn't be able to say that to their kids. They wouldn't be able to say that, or they wouldn't be able to receive that if somebody would have spoken to them like that.
Right.
It doesn't matter the context. It doesn't matter whatever it is. We're all just people wanting to be, do, and have a happier existence. And we just so happen to be the only sort of organism that can communicate by way of language, by way of, we've got language of the body, we've got language of the voice, and things of that nature. Let's just understand where the other person is coming from. And that's the reason why when you're communicating with someone, they're looking this way, you're looking that way. What they see is not what you're seeing. I don't know if we can make it any better than that.
Thank you. That was wonderful, Prosper. That was exactly what I think people need to hear. And I will leave it with this final thought of, remember that communication is the behavior by which you express your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas, your emotions, all of these things. And that communication matters, which is why having conversations isn't about telling people what to do and how to do it. It's about communicating with them. Because at the end of the day, it's not just for them, it's for you too. And thank you. Thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me, because I really hope people will take from it the understanding of what healthy leadership really does look like.
Well, you know what I did today? I just came and spoke to a friend. The rest is just profit. So there you go. I really appreciate you for having me on the call today.
Oh, thank you. Be well. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.